celebrating 9 years of podcast excellence. The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
Personally, I'm really annoyed by having to go and talk about the Sasha Banks and Naomi walkout situation for Monday Night Raw. And we've only been a couple days into this, and all the speculation, all the stories, and the fact that we're getting very little, if anything, from WWE and anything from Sasha Banks or Naomi in real life characters, we're not getting any words from them. Everybody's staying mute. But yet the entire wrestling world wants to speculate, and they want to go ahead and analyze, and they want to assume in their dirt sheet mentalities and Monday morning quarterback what they think happened. And there are sources that the dirt sheets are talking to, and I don't know what to think of all this. Brian Alvarez at Wrestling Observer, who I usually kind of feel like is a pretty good gauge as to where things are when it comes to stories, calls it preposterous, and it is. This is a ridiculous situation. And we can go through and talk about how this only hurts WWE in the first place. Because Sasha Banks, for her case, she's Hollywood bound. She's already becoming a fixture among Hollywood right now. She is a celebrity. The Mandalorian has made her a bona fide celebrity. You could say maybe not A-list, but she's definitely recognizable. And a lot of A-list stars are working with her and connecting with her. Hell, there's a clip going around now about Kevin Hart on some show of his where he's sitting in an ice bath. They're in, dual ice baths separately. Sasha Banks is in one and Kevin Hart is in the other. So you got that going for you. And I know that Sasha Banks has been on making other appearances, and she's been out there. I noticed that she put a new TikTok feed for herself, Real Mercedes Varnado. It's out there now. And she's building that from scratch. And there isn't much WWE content over there. I mean, there is with her in the gear, but it's really just her own feed. And of course, her Instagram feed is huge. The thing is, when you look at the career that she's had, she's been around a long time. And I'm actually surprised that she is not working more of a part-time schedule in the first place. Because that's where we are. At the moment, we're not getting there yet. And there's a lot. And the problem is, too, that WWE is getting this here. However this reason became up is the fact that now we're dealing with a thing where this is becoming a race issue. It's becoming political. And there are a number of people out there taking the advantage of saying, look at two talented black women being thrown down, and not being treated properly, not being represented right, not being booked as they should, as they, the whole idea of deserving. Now, I'm not judging anything about the fact that Sasha Banks isn't deserving of a championship belt or in a main event storyline. Yeah, I'm not much into the whole idea of seeing Sasha Banks and Naomi as a tag team. It's nice. Listen, I like both wrestlers. They're both talented. And they've been on our TV for a long time, both of them. You would think about Nikki as Nikki Knight, Naomi as Naomi Knight, right? Or what was it? Yeah, it was Naomi. Oh, going back to the competition era of NXT. What was that, 2010? So you have her there, and then Sasha herself has been on, how many years now? She's been in front of us since 2012. So she's been 10 years in front of us. All of her 20s she spent in front of us when we got to watch her. And look, I'm actually surprised she's still here. And the reason I say that is because when you look at some of the other stars that we have, there are not a lot of stars that were then divas or now of the women's division that stay around because of just like every other career field. In some cases, especially when it comes to wrestling, you're going to have women wrestlers that are going to want to become mothers. And we know that's what's happened many times. Becky Lynch is a great example. Lacey Evans is another great example. And that's going to happen. And you're expecting me to tell me that, okay, so Charlotte Flair might not want to be a mother down the line, or Bayley might not want to be a mother down the line. Like, that's going to happen. And if Sasha Banks, right now with She's been married for a while, and she could very well decide at some point where that's going to be something that is important to her. Who knows? Motherhood becomes that kind of thing. But then what happened with Sasha Banks in the decade-long career she's had in WWE, she's a star now, to the point where she is now on that ramp to Hollywood. We talked about it. The pipeline to Hollywood, it continues to get filled by WWE talent. Look, even Miro, would have been recognized first as Rusev in WWE, but because of him, he got himself into a new upfront trailer for a new show for CBS called East New York. Now, it's just a bit part, but he was in it. So he's working. That's why we haven't seen him in a while. He's been working in Hollywood. He's been getting some acting work. Same thing with Sasha Banks. Okay, if you look at what Sasha Banks has done so far in terms of her career, I mean, I haven't looked at what her IMDb, but we don't even know, and I don't think anybody really talks about the level of work she's doing right now and what she's working on as we speak in terms of what she's doing right now in various roles. So let's talk about it. Obviously, a lot of her stuff is WWE, but remember, she was in The Mandalorian, a couple of episodes, and now she's getting featured on other shows. So she was on Good Mythical Morning recently, Kevin Hart's Cold as Balls, and also with Logan Paul. So she's been making the rounds on shows right now, and that's what's going to happen. Because of the deal with SmackDown on Fox, you had her being featured at the ESPY Award. Well, she was at the ESPY Awards, presented there. She was an honorary starter of a NASCAR race on Fox. And she's been making the rounds on television too. So she's been noticeable, recognizable. And now you have to just realize she's getting some work out there and she's going to get noticed. So we already know that she's going to pursue a Hollywood career. Pretty obvious we're seeing that right now. Let me go back to the story from Essentially Sports that talked about Disney can get me. When she was asked to express her work in the acting industry, this is back in October 2021, she said, let's find out what she said. She says, quote, I definitely been booked and busy, and you could definitely see me in a lot of shows, not Star Wars because I can't say anything. Disney can get me, but yeah, you could definitely see me in things in the future. We don't even know what episode, where she's going to be going on forward. But only 2 episodes she was on, and there's much more into play. Now, she's not signed on with, as of October, this report says, she had not signed on with Disney or any other Hollywood production. A deal falling in place isn't far off. But I think one thing that's got to be understood is that if she decides to leave, I mean, this might not look good in terms of if the walkout is legitimate and this is not a look for her to be put out there going forward. That might be one thing. But she's been talking about it in various interviews. Let me go back to another one. So this is going back March 29th. This is prior to WrestleMania. She spoke to The Athletic. And she made it clear that Hollywood aspirations don't stop at a cameo in a galaxy far, far away. Quote, I want my face on the posters. I want people buying tickets to see Sasha Banks. It's so cool that my hard work since I was a kid is paying off. Women's wrestling, something I wanted forever. It's being taken seriously. I never want that to change. I want it to be something people look to, and it's the greatest thing they've ever seen. Then she went on to say that I see The Rock as maybe the biggest global superstar, and John Cena is coming right behind him. It would be cool to see a woman step into that level. I think the stars are aligned for me. And she's only 30 years old. I mean, she's got so much of a career she could have. There's no confirmation that she would make future episodes of The Mandalorian, but still, she was on the show. And the appearance has gotten a lot of buzz. So who knows what more she's going to do after that. But I would not say anything that would not be a chance that something could happen. So like I said, she was on Kevin Hart's Cold as Balls. And in the episode, she's also battling Kevin Hart with a lightsaber duel. in the lightsaber duel. And these kind of things are going on right now, and everybody's having fun. Listen, she is getting noticed. It's just a matter of time before she gets noticed again, and then all of a sudden, she's going to be out there and noticed. Okay? It's all a matter of time. She's going to get out there, and she's going to get recognized. And if things were to happen where she's going to go and drop out, then that's okay. But her career is moving forward no matter what. She's been on red carpets. Listen, there's a lot going on right now. Now, when she talked to Logan Paul on Impulsive, she expressed her confidence as an actor and believes she has what it takes to become a star like The Rock. Quote, it's kind of really hard to do with the WWE schedule. I mean, when I shot The Mandalorian last year, it went from doing TV, doing live events, and then just getting on a plane to Los Angeles, shooting all week, getting on red eye, going back to TV, putting my hair in, taking my hair out for 3 months. And it was just, wow. So if I'm going to take over the world, it's like I got to choose one or the other. And that's the hard part of thinking, because wrestling has been my life, my whole life. So when that time and opportunity comes, I have to sit back and think, what's next? You know, is it full-time Hollywood? Is it full-time doing something else that I have a passion for? Or is it still being here, making more history, changing the game, and leaving a forever cemented legacy? She also said that, but I feel like I've already done that, you know? I feel like I'm already a Hall of Famer. What is that last legacy piece I can leave here? I'm still searching for it. Note that. Note that right there. This is April 8th, by the way, this story. Only a month and a half ago. And that's a telling sign. Look, WWE is not putting her out there as like this legacy star that has been out there as, you know, multiple champion. She hasn't won a WrestleMania, things like that. So there's a lot of judgment being put on her right now. First of all, there's a lot of reports about the morale of really the perception of her in the locker room. That's the one thing that we're hearing a lot about. And then we're hearing more about, you know, what is it that Naomi brings into the fact that she walked out and went along with this. My thing is, I don't want to talk about the whole story as to what brought up this. Like, I don't want to get caught up in the palace intrigue here. All this stuff that's going on. But she made it a point on Impulsive that she might make that decision someday. And so she's already said it. And if the folks at Disney are looking at her, or in the Star Wars franchise, put her out there, and she made a good impression. She was out there in Hollywood and Los Angeles for 3 months, she said. I will just say this. If she's out there for that long, she's gotten a lot of talk with agents, a lot of talk with various people within. And she was out there. I don't know if WWE, any liaisons of WWE were with her. She was out there doing it. She was just given the time to go pursue. So when she's had that to work for her, then that's what's going to go on. Look, I have put myself down the line where I'm saying to myself, and I've said this before, let me just remind you, I've been talking about this for months. When I talked about how down the line, when WWE is going to have this, where they have this particular ceiling they have with their talent anyway, I always talk about this. And I always say to myself, you know what's going to happen here? They're going to go ahead and have a point where some of the stars they built out so well are going to eventually just drop right off. You do know that. Because that's what's going to happen. I put a story out. Let me remind you again. This is going back to August 5th of last year. And I made the point that WWE creatively controls the pipeline to the Hollywood vacuum. And it's just a matter of time before some other stars are going to get noticed. Listen, before Becky Lynch got pregnant, she already got an appearance on Billions. It's just a matter of time before she gets looked at and brought into another place. It's going to happen. Somewhere down the line, it's going to happen. And then after that, I mean, think about what comes up next. She's going to get work. It's going to be her, and there's going to be other stars within that will get looked at and will get work. And Hollywood will be knocking on their door. We already know that there's a definite, that door has been opened, and that recruiters and that agents and that talent recruiters, they're going to keep an eye on her. Studios are going to keep an eye on the talent that they see, because you know what they're doing? The major Hollywood studios, the people in Hollywood that matter, you know, if you're looking to find action stars, if you're to go ahead and go into these action type movies, you need to find new stars that are talented, athletic, and be really a part of things, or reality shows, or whatever they might be. We already know that the wrestling can do crossover. It's always been like that. But the level of crossover we have right now, when you have current stars like The Rock and John Cena, it's just a matter of time. Even before Ronda Rousey was in WWE, remember, she was getting quite a bit of work in movies as well. And she could still be doing that right now, but this current career stretch has her doing wrestling because she's got that, and she's got her kid, and, you know, she's got her family, so it's a much different life than what it was before. So she's doing just fine. Like the post-UFC career, she was not kicking it out. And she could have kept doing Hollywood if she wanted to. But, you know, there's some stars that will be one-dimensional because they might not have the full acting chops to do something. But with Sasha Banks, I can see where there's a lot more for her down the line that she could be doing. We don't know what. But I think she's talented enough to be in other parts of other movies. Because right there, how she got the Mandalorian, that means something. Even though she's not a recurring character yet. She's only been in 2 episodes. But she could be out there doing more. And just the fact that she was on it stands out. And she's getting brought on board. I don't know if she has talent representation yet. If somebody's booking her appearances or whatnot now. But we talked about that a couple weeks ago, that was the plan that WWE was going to have, was that Nick Khan, through his connections, he had brought on somebody to go and have a talent management group, and then that fizzled after only like a month. And that was it. So now we're here. And this is what magnifies this walkout even more. Not just as a walkout. Honestly, I look beyond the little, you know, the talk right here about why she did it and what that means. Listen, they're still both under contract. They haven't lost their jobs yet. They have not been future endeavored. Nothing like that has happened. There's been no punishment. Nothing has been said at all. We don't know anything. We know nothing about what happened. And that's the way it is. And people want to make it as something more. Well, okay. But there's various stories that come out for this. And, of course, the media can't help themselves but go clickbait. So let's bring up some of the clickbait that's out there. Some of the stories have gone out there to really bring people up and bring them up to a froth. Let's talk about it. So a couple stories came up. There's been stories that have been reported, but really we don't know much more. Okay? I am pretty sure that all of you that are listening to this program probably already know something about what's going on. So we know that Sasha Banks and Naomi reportedly walked out of the arena just hours before they were due to headline the show in a main event match. Now, they were going to be in the main event of Raw. The six-pack challenge was stupid because, you know, what they decided to do instead with Asuka and Becky Lynch to determine who was going to take on Bianca Belair probably was the better move. The six-pack challenge was just something that could include everybody into the mix because Nikki Ash and Doudrop, they needed to do something with them. And that's what they decided to do here. It was like, okay. But that was originally the six-pack challenge, and they put all this together. And by the way, I thought Raw was fine this week. It's been fine the last few weeks, last month or two. It's been fine. Like, I'm not over the moon with everything, but they're still building up stars. They are trying to rebuild and reload. It's pretty apparent right now that they're doing that because they have no other choice. Okay? I mean, they consistently will keep showing Cody Rhodes up front and center. Now you got him in a Hell in a Cell match with Seth Rollins coming up, and they're making it a big deal. Remember, we don't have that many titles to work off of either for what they're doing for Hell in a Cell. Remember that part too. So originally the match was going to be Naomi and Sasha, who are tag team champions, and by the way, they apparently gave the belts and relinquished them to John Laurinaitis. I don't know what that's all about. We don't even know if that's confirmed or not. As far as I know, I don't have nobody said anything yet. And as far as I know, the company's made a statement, and to me, it's vague at best. So we know that it was going to be Asuka, Becky Lynch, Doudrop, Nikki Ash to determine a new challenger to Bianca Belair's Raw Women's Championship. Okay. They announced, they kept everybody transparent as the fact that they did not just change the match just to change the match. Like, they actually told people the match was being changed. The card subject to change, and it did. And I really didn't feel much difference when they moved it from six-pack challenge to this title contenders match. I didn't think it was any much difference either. And the match looked fine to me. The ending looked good. It was a good way to finish it off. And Asuka now goes after Bianca Belair. Fine. Sounds like solid booking to me. And then the original idea they said was Naomi was planned to be the winner of the match and become Bianca Belair's new number one challenger. Okay. And all this reports, and nobody's going to come up front and say who it is. All this condition of anonymity that's being done by everybody in the back. There's only so many people that know what actually went on, and probably don't even know the whole story. And all this speculation from other people out there, from the Ariane Andrews, former Camerons, or the Road Dogs out there, all speculating. You know, I'm not gonna go ahead and take that information and listen to it. I'm not going to take that as confirmation. And for those reporters that want to go ahead and, you know, use that as stories to include as a post on their website, yeah. But I'm not going to talk about it. That's not important to me. And then there's the Twitter thread by an account followed by both Banks and Naomi suggesting legitimate connections. Okay. I'm not taking that either unless it's actually quoting. And even then, it's not. Look. Sasha Banks, Naomi, WWE, they could all be speaking on this. But it's pretty apparent that the story continues to just fester. Like, we're not getting any answers. We're not getting anything about this. We just have to wait till the next show. Hey, if it does get some buzz and some ratings, because Naomi and Sasha Banks are featured on both programs, they could very well pop up on Friday. And we could wait and find out what they're going to do then. And so they were not going to be defending the tag team titles, but they were going to be put in separate runs of singles matches to make the company's female champions look dominant. Okay, so if Naomi was going to be put into another title match, because she went after the SmackDown Women's title when Charlotte withheld the belt and Charlotte won, but Naomi got up to the main event and was near the top, but Charlotte's been booked so strong and only Ronda Rousey could beat her. Well, that's just the way that's being booked. But I don't think Naomi's, below any particular level. I think she's been booked fine. She's an important part of SmackDown. She's a figurehead on SmackDown in that women's division. She's one of the higher ranked talents there. She's got longevity. She's got a legacy there. She's been there for a long time. And also with her, it doesn't matter because she's married into the bloodline. She's married into Jey Uso, right? Or Jimmy. I forget which one. So she's in there like the Olympic Village style. She's married to one of the other talents that is very much in. And by the way, with all the things the Usos have individually done themselves to get in trouble, they continue to do okay. And Naomi was also involved when there was one traffic stop when Jay got pulled over as well. Remember that? Was speeding and all this stuff. Same thing goes, man. Naomi is like immune to whatever's going to happen. So I don't know what the whole deal with about them both leaving. Doesn't make sense. But everybody's complaining about the fact that, they haven't had a decent storyline to focus on over the past few months. Well, because that's what they do. The tag team titles they're just props. They don't mean anything to anybody. For how long did Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler hold those belts? And it meant nothing. When you get the tag team belts, you were actually, what they were trying to do was what they were doing with Riddle and Randy Orton. That's what I feel like it is. It's very much like that. Two prominent stars holding those belts to make them important. That's it. And they're brought out there just because they don't have any other tag teams to go after. That's another story. Like, I would much prefer that they were both singles competitors again. And actually, I was kind of surprised that when Sasha moved back over to the SmackDown side, well, can we get her after Ronda Rousey? Can we get her? I mean, we could have always had Sasha and Charlotte again. I would have been totally fine with that, but we didn't. They decided to go with Ronda, and the plan was for Ronda to go and come in, and now Charlotte's out. And if Sasha was actually going to go back to SmackDown and then compete against Ronda and be a contender for Ronda going after the women's title, the SmackDown Championship, as they're calling it now, because Ronda doesn't want to call it the women's title anymore. She wants to empower it. Well, nobody really saw the situation live on air. The only indication we had of anything going on was Corey Graves making a comment saying that Banks and Naomi similarly and unprofessionally left the arena. That's it. And I'm not going to I am not going to rule out anything right now. Because I am not prepared to rule out that this is a storyline. I'm not prepared to rule out that this is a work. And if you're going to shit on me for that, go right ahead. I've been around doing this show for 10 years. I think long enough that could the onus, maybe just the thought process of the WWE to do this among their own fans to let this happen. Like, this doesn't hurt anybody if that's the case. Remember, all we know is that they were believed to have dropped the belts at John Laurinaitis' desk backstage before leaving the venue. Now, in this statement that was brought out yesterday, on Tuesday evening, they put it out there and they say, okay, when Sasha Banks, quote, and Naomi arrived at the arena this afternoon, they were informed of their participation in the main event of tonight's Monday Night Raw. During the broadcast, they walked into WWE Head of Talent Relations, John Laurinaitis' office, with their suitcases in hand, placed their tag team championship belts on their desk, and walked out. That's it. That's all they said. Oh, they claimed they weren't respected enough as tag team champions, and even though they had 8 hours to rehearse and construct their match, they claimed they were uncomfortable in the ring with two of their opponents, even though they'd had matches with those individuals in the past with no consequence. And the bottom line is, nothing has happened with either. Oh, Jimmy is Naomi's husband. Sorry, Jimmy. So that happened, and nothing has come of it since. And so there were people that said that they did not want to work with unsafe opponents. No. Look. There's no resolution to that statement. It's just a statement and that's it. It's not anything else. No investigation. No further details. Nothing. It was just a statement. And it could have very well been a statement where they put out something that could have very well been meant to nothing. It could have meant something towards storyline. Can I bring up this story as well? There was a story that went back a while when the ThunderDome was still going on. And you know that they did a statement as well on Sasha Banks' brutal injury after Bayley's attack. I just want to bring this out as me trying to validate. Like, if I was going to court and I was trying to go ahead and prove my case that this is a work, well, let's use this. So Sasha Banks, when she had a match, or was attacked by Bayley, right? They put a story out there and made the point and said, okay. And let me go real quickly. I'm going to try to I have a story that talked about it, but they don't have the actual statement. So give me a second while I actually go and put this in. Here we go. October 5th, 2020. Official statement released on Sasha Banks' condition in the future after Bayley's attack, because he put her on a stretcher and sent her out. A storyline medical update. Right? And just give me a minute just to go ahead and see if we can compare both stories and see what they are. Just saying, okay? And I'm going to try to compare both here and just see what happens. Okay, I think it's important that we just bring this up. Now, the story back in the ThunderDome. Okay, let me repeat. This is September 2020. Quote, the Boss seemingly sustained a knee injury after crashing into the post during the WWE Women's Tag Team title match then being on the receiving end of Shayna Baszler's relentless offense. But the worst was yet to come for Banks after she refused medical attention. Banks was brutally attacked by her partner and her best friend Bayley, who culminated in the assault by wrapping a steel chair around Banks' neck and jumping off the second rope to stomp on it. Banks was taken from the Thunderdome in an ambulance. WWE.com confirmed that Banks was taken to a local medical facility and being evaluated. Storyline. And do it all the time. Storyline. And so we had that happen. And in a very similar fashion, we get another storyline, another statement that could have very well been written in storyline manner. And by the way, the statement is just a blanket statement. We don't even know who said it. There are no official... They brought up John Laurinaitis' office. That's it. Which everybody that's in the know on the internet knows that John Laurinaitis is the one that's always responsible for the future endeavors. He's the one that makes the phone calls. Head of talent relations. So we don't know of anything that's going on here, if there's any validity behind the whole story whatsoever. We don't know. But yet everybody wants to get into a huff about what happened. Now, besides all that there, okay, we can move along and then talk about stories about how this wants to get more information out there to really just get people all worked up. Okay? So let's take 3 stories that talk about this right now. Because everybody wanted to go ahead and attack WWE, which is fine. They all wanted to go and make an attack on them because of what happened. So there's 3 stories I want to pick from. Here we are. First one's from the Sportster. Has Sasha Banks fulfilled her potential, or has she fallen short of expectations? So now they're going to try to say that here in this story that she was destined for big things from the very beginning, and she's gone on to achieve a lot on the main roster. Main evented WrestleMania. And everything starts from the early phase of the Women's Revolution. She never had big title runs. She's held the Raw Women's title on 5 different occasions, and all those runs haven't even combined for 4 months as champion. Yes, her appearances have not been good for WrestleMania. She now does have that win over... I mean, she has the match that she had with Belair, but in fashion, Bianca won anyway. First match was a triple threat against Flair and Lynch. Then she was in the next year in a fatal 4-way against Bayley, Flair, and Nia Jax. Then she was on the kickoff show in the Women's Battle Royal. WrestleMania 35, fatal 4-way women's tag team match, teaming with Bayley. And then, of course, she went to Hollywood, and then she went and did her thing with one-on-one with Belair. And, you know, it's what it is. Listen, now, the other thing they talk about is that in this story that Sasha and her attention on The Mandalorian, that the company then never capitalized on her attention. They say one does feel that there was a window of opportunity there to catapult Banks to the level of Lynch and Flair, but the company just did not know how to do it. No, it's not true. They just know that once she starts getting that Hollywood running right there, she's destined to be out. And remember, there was a time where they felt that there was a bit of an issue when she did leave for a significant amount of time for mental health reasons. We remember that part. So there were a lot of things where, you know, to bring her back and to feel that trust factor. Am I going to say it's right? I know a lot of you are going to say no. That's fine. But for me, I mean, that's where the company's standpoint's coming from. Is that they feel there's a little bit of hesitancy as to what to do with her. First of all, for 3 reasons. Number 1, she has been injury prone. She has been injured a number of times in her career. Number 2, the mental health issues, I think, would have played a factor. And that she's had to take time away. And then I think there's been other times where Sasha's been a little bit, where the morale's been a little bit tough. We've heard that kind of story as well. Some negativity towards her, which is unfortunate. She's talented as all hell. She's wonderful. She's great. She's one of the best women's wrestlers there are out there, period. But I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to be pretty bold about this. She's not wrestling anywhere else. She's not going to wrestle anywhere else. She's not going to AEW or any other wrestling promotion. I will put a paycheck on that. I will put my paycheck on that. That's going to be true. If anything ever happens to Sasha Banks where she's let go of her contract or she leaves or asks for her release, she's going to Hollywood. And that's it. And she will live happily ever after with her husband. If she decides to have a child, that's fine with that too. And she'll live on with her life. But she already put 10 years into this company. And you can't expect women in this company to stay for that long a period. They're not all going to be Natalia. I hate to tell you that. But you're talking about stars that have been around, for 10 years. You're talking about all those women within that women's revolution. When you look at Banks, Lynch, Flair, Bayley, at the moment, we already know that Becky's already had a baby, and that's happened. And, she's been put as a very big main eventer. And down the line, will she stay in WWE forever? I don't know. I think people are going to be looking at her as well. Down the line, I think Becky Lynch could very well be considered Hollywood bound too. I really do. I think Charlotte is a lifer. I don't know about Bayley. For Bayley, it's just her injury was very unfortunate at a rough time. But I think when she comes back, she's going to be a major player again. And we're all going to be happy to see her back. I just don't know if you're going to get her back as the heel we once had. I hope she does, because she's been very good at what she did. Let's see what happens anyway. And as for Naomi, I don't expect her to go anywhere either. And I think that's what's more important than anything else, is that. You want to judge, you want to go ahead and criticize the creative approach with both of them right now? Sure. But you know what? They are being booked as tag team champions. Just because they're not being booked in the main event title feuds, your Ronda Rousey is getting paid a lot, okay? And her contract, she's only there for a limited time, for a year or so. And so they're going to make the most out of her. And Fox is expecting her to be on there on a regular basis. And they got to book her on the big shows because she's still a draw. And that's not judging anything about Sasha Banks and Naomi. If they're still going to the shows and they're still out there working, that's one other story. And then Bianca Belair is a star right now. She's the women's champion on the Raw side. She's fantastic. She is at the level of what those four original women of the Women's Revolution were. Bianca Belair, they've successfully done an excellent job of building her as such a main event star now to the level of Becky Lynch, Asuka, Bayley, Charlotte Flair, Sasha Banks, and Becky Lynch. All of them. She's in that same class right now. And I'll tell you what, Bianca Belair is also destined for greatness after this too. That Hollywood thing will definitely rub off because Hollywood needs new stars as well. Remember, they just keep keeping having the same stars. And remember, when you got hundreds and thousands of hours of content that had to be produced on a regular basis to all these streaming services, there's so much content being done. I mean, what is it? I saw like 500 TV shows, or 450 to 500 TV shows now being done every year. There might be 6, 10, 13 episodes, whatever. But they need talent on all these shows. And what's the chance that some of these stars can't find their way over and the scheduling of the WWE does not work for them, so they might have to go ahead and drop off altogether or take extended time off? Because that's going to happen. Why do you think they keep going after athletes in the next in line program? In hopes that those athletes are not going to become... they might eventually, but you know what? There's more of a time for them to be there in their prime, working for the company, building a good acumen for their skill set, and then the promo ability will be so good that their acting ability will then get improved, and that style that WWE does will work eventually for Hollywood. And they're the only company that has to worry about that. This is not with any other wrestling company, just WWE, because they are sports entertainment. So if you want to judge the entertainment side of them, well, guess what? Hollywood looks at them as entertainers. And that's why. Another story I want to take from is from Deadspin. They're saying that Vince McMahon deserves whatever consequences comes from booking them poorly. Now, they talked about talents being taken off camera for displeasure with the company. In the story, they said that in the microscopic chance this is all storyline, kudos to McMahon and friends for the swerve to get hype for the women's division, but it's not a storyline. Back on planet Earth, Banks and Naomi should be commended for taking a stand against creative decisions they feel are unmistakably bad. Well, because of this, it doesn't make a difference if they make a stand or not. You don't expect Vince McMahon to go ahead and budge because of this. He's got a pretty loaded roster of talent. He's not going to worry about the fact that if he has a couple of employees that are disgruntled and they feel like they want to make some kind of a statement. I don't think it's going to happen. So they talk about, now in the Deadspin story, they have to go and talk about representation, diversity, equity, inclusion. This is Eric Blum that wrote this story for Deadspin. Listen, I'm not judging the guy, but this is what he wants to say. Banks and Naomi are two of the three black women on the main roster. The other is Bianca Belair, the Kurt Angle Women's Champion, one of the most marketed stars, deservingly so in the company today, because of talent. It doesn't make a difference of her skin color or her background. It doesn't make a difference. Listen, she was raised wonderfully. She's a star athlete. She was going to make it somewhere anyway because she's that damn talented, okay? Whatever she wants to do with herself, I'm sure she could have put her mind to it and accomplished anything. So Bianca Belair I wasn't going to be worried about. But you know what? She's done such an incredible job working her way up. She's a bona fide main event WWE superstar right now in her prime. And we're very proud of her. I'm very proud of where she's gone. And it's only in about 2 years' time, which is even the better part. Of the 24 women on the roster, 9 are of color. But, you know, I mean, what's a proper representation? If we're going to go through all that, listen, they're going for a worldwide audience. They have stars from different countries and different ethnicities out there as well. Like, I mean, you know, if we're going to really go that route, I mean, I don't understand what that whole story is. And I'm not here to go ahead and start talking about, oh, well, look, Raquel Rodriguez is Spanish, and then you got, you know, Aaliyah out there, and, you know, you got Roxanne Perez, and Elektra Lopez is out there, too, huh? But don't forget about her, hey, you know, Lash Legend, you know. I mean, if you're worried about the diversity, equity, inclusion, I think they've been doing that. I mean, we don't hear about, you know, do we need, like, checking the boxes? Is that what's important? And I always wonder what that whole story is about when everybody talks about it. And then Naomi, one of the longest tenured women in WWE. She's been around since development in 2009. And then the story they bring up here is like, you know, if you think that a second that Tony Khan wouldn't try to sign both women if they were free agents, you're delusional. Sure, but that's a lot of money they're going to go for. And I don't know if they're one to bring them in the company. I just don't, I mean, I don't think either one of them is leaving anywhere. And maybe my words are going to be eaten after this. I don't care. I just don't believe it. Banks and Naomi leaving WWE from this incident isn't impossible, but still heavily unlikely. Oh, even he agrees with me. Having a high-profile public dispute in the modern era of social media is uncharted waters. Punk's situation was different. This won't last long. With Bayley's imminent return, the organic storyline about her history with Banks and the tag titles, a return to TV or a total split from the WWE's coming. What won't change is the bubble's been bursting out of McMahon's domain. Will be the last time it happens. This company's been progressively moving forward. They're still sexist. They're still misogynistic. This is what professional wrestling was and always is. You're not going to change this a part of the sport, okay? You're not going to get the kind of progressivism that you want. And listen, I'm not being political here. I'm just saying, you guys wanted to be more like that, if that's what some of you want that. But they're not going to do it. The company's going to do what they're going to do. But they are going to probably take care of this situation, resolve it pretty quickly, and it'll be not in the people's conscience after a while, because I think something will happen where they will both appear again, and that'll be it. And if not, Sasha Banks will probably leave and she will go to Hollywood. That's it. That's what's going to happen. I don't think there's going to be anything else after that. So one other story I want to bring up is TheRoot.com, which is very much towards the black community, African American community, whatever you want to call it. And they talked about how they deserve respect and better storylines. Okay. So the story they talk about here, storylines for the women's division as a whole, but especially tag teams, have been awful. All the established teams have been either released or broken up. There are only 3 teams right now, and it's well known among superstars, fans, and wrestling media. Titles aren't important. Correct. So they mentioned now there's this fact that unprofessional somehow only rears its head when black wrestlers dare to speak their truth or step off the path companies and certain fans think they belong on. It's always okay for white wrestlers to be dissatisfied and speak their mind, but wrestlers of color are expected to just swallow bullshit and be happy about it. The bravery of Mercedes and Trinity to walk away and advocate for themselves against the most powerful man in the business cannot be overstated. Okay. Well, I am not calling him unprofessional. We didn't see anything happen here. We don't know what's been discussed. We don't know anything. If anyone else just take that statement, you could just read that as many ways as you want. But we don't know anything here. And I've talked about it for the last 50 minutes. And you know what? I don't think I got anywhere else from it either. But I felt like I got a vent about it. Everybody else is talking about it. But I want to make the point of Sasha could go somewhere else. And she'll do just fine. You're talking about 2. These are not tenure positions. And according to all the fans out there, WWE is not going to give you exactly what you want. That's what they choose. Listen, I think Naomi and Sasha Banks should be consistently in the title picture for either one of those titles. Right? I'd prefer that. I mean, if you're not going to put them up against Ronda Rousey, because Ronda Rousey is going to be unbeatable at this point and dominant, we'll probably not lose that belt to anybody else for a while. Okay? But Sasha Banks, she's already worked with Bianca Belair pretty well. So there's nothing else to do there in the same vein. So like, okay, so what else do you do next? I mean, they're not the new toys in the toy box. You know, they have WWE's looking at other stars for the future. And so they are kind of putting, what they're really doing right now is they're taking some of their veterans and putting them a little bit in the back seat. That's what's happening right now. I mean, I hate to say it, but Sasha Banks would work well mentoring with a younger star. I mean, she's not older, but she's a veteran. She's 10 years in the business. So she could be considered, they're both veterans. They don't look like they're veterans. They're not chiseled and old and, you know, out there. But something's going to happen anyway. And you know what? Sasha Banks said it herself. Like, she's main event at WrestleMania. She's been out there. She's won titles. She's accomplished just about everything. What else is left for her? With Naomi, they never gave her much of the times that she had to really get over. But, like, you know, she has a really great gimmick now, the glow. And they've kept her consistently somewhere in the upper mid-card or the main event level. She's always been around, and the crowd responds to her really well. And that's what it is. Okay. I'm going to leave it there. Listen, a couple of stories I'm going to just bring up real quick and just kind of focus on for a second, and that's it. So Ric Flair is apparently going to wrestle for the first time in years in July, and originally the thought was to get Ricky Steamboat to go ahead and fight him, and Ricky Steamboat declined. So Ric Flair, I saw him, you know, training with Jay Lethal. Okay, he can move around. He doesn't look like Hulk Hogan out there at the end of his run in TNA. At least Ric Flair, he can still take bumps, it looks like, but I mean, he's going to run slow. I don't know what you do out there or who you put him out there with. But then what am I going to say about Ric Flair? Listen, I see Ricky Morton at 65 years old working at NWA. He's still working and hitting Canadian destroyers and shit, all right? Can't say much about that. So it is what it is, man. Ric Flair wants to go ahead and have one more match. That's on him. It's fine. Whatever. I'm not making a big judgment about that. Nobody else wants to do that, but that's not for me. And then, what is it? Tony Khan had made some comments to Forbes magazine talking about, I'm not so autocratic that I want to control every word that somebody says on television. So that got some people talking. And then another comment about, when I hear somebody ripping up scripts on Monday, what were they doing all weekend? I put those stories and I dropped them into the description here. So if you want to look at it for yourself, that's fine. We know the WrestlingNews.co reporting about the fact that the upfronts for both networks, when it comes to wrestling, that they were going to be presented as sports programming. And Dave Meltzer mentioned that pitching themselves as sports could earn them higher ad rates from advertisers covering that programming, saying that, quote, both WWE is trying to position themselves as sports in order to garner higher ad rates. That's a lot more convenient to say they are. So they are. They're pushing like the one thing about our sport is that we have the game that goes back and forth until the final seconds because we can script it. AEW, Warner Media is trying to put them in the sports category as well for the same reason. And Warner Media is trying to get heavily into sports right now. The new people in charge are just getting their feet wet. And that AEW was going to be pushed strongly in the upfronts, and then not, and now they're being back to being heavily supported. So we don't know what's going to happen with those as well. We don't know what's going to be coming of that. So another story just dropped into the mix. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what happened on TV tonight and where things are when it comes to... So we know that Double or Nothing's coming up, Las Vegas, not this Sunday, but next Sunday, the 29th. So that's going to be coming up. It's a big show coming up. We know that Adam Cole has now advanced to the finals of the AEW Owen Hart Foundation Men's Tournament. And then Wardlow got 10 lashes from the MJF. And among the matches they already have scheduled, Hangman Page will defend the AEW World Heavyweight Championship against CM Punk. And they've been building that storyline wonderfully. Thunder Rosa against Serena Deeb, and a very interesting promo from Serena Deeb tonight for the AEW Women's World title. Adam Cole will take on the winner of either, and I forget what it was. It's like that was Jeff Hardy, Samoa Joe, and by the way, Johnny Elite appearing tonight as a Joker. Good to see him back into work. He was a little bit rusty out there, but nevertheless pulled things off all right. Women's tournament finals for the Owen Hart Foundation tournament. We don't know yet, but they have their semifinals all set to go, and they're working on that next. MJF versus Wardlow, World Tag Team titles. It'll be a triple threat. Jurassic Express versus Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland versus Team Taz, Ricky Starks, and Powerhouse Hobbs. And then we'll have a 5-on-5 match. Jericho Appreciation Society versus Blackpool Combat Club. Eddie Kingston, Santana Ortiz. That's good stuff. In the buy-in match right now, we have Hook and Danhausen against Tony Nese and Smart Mark Sterling. There you go. And yes, Takeshita, that wrestled tonight, was a hell of a wrestler tonight and did a really good job. And really, people were talking a lot about how well he looked, which he was on TV on Dark Elevation last week, I think it was. And they put him out there. Maki Ito was out. So, it was good to go and see what they did with that tonight. They did a pretty good job with what was set up. And there you go, man. I think that's not nothing else I'm going to bring up. That's all I'm going to talk about tonight. So, we will be doing a post show for AEW Double or Nothing coming up on next Sunday, right here, WrestlingIsReal.com. And make sure to go check out the website. All the latest episodes are there. You want to go and connect with me on social media. All that good stuff is there. That's great. Thanks for listening to another Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us. Thank you for listening to the Wrestling is Real podcast. You can find all previous episodes at WrestlingIsReal.com or subscribe to the show on all major podcast outlets, including Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at King of Podcasts, and search King of Podcasts on YouTube. or type youtube.com/JBRASCO951. This has been a presentation of the King of Podcasts Radio Network.